What if I chopped off your arm right now and, like a salamander, it would just grow right back? Growing up, I had a lot of questions. So many, I actually got kicked out of Sunday school. How come a salamander can grow its arm back after being cut? It's made of skin, bone, and flesh, just like our arm. And yet, we cannot do that, or at least, not yet. I would stare at my cuts, at my wounds, and be mesmerized, seeing the immune system fighting infection, seeing my skin come together as if nothing ever happened. This endless questioning, this incessant curiosity about regeneration, immunology, made me come all the way from Portugal, where I'm from, to Harvard to get my PhD and learn about the immune system, to then the University of California, San Francisco, where I learned how to genetically engineer immune cells taken from blood. Now, I am a scientist at the Medical University of South Carolina, here in Charleston. Where my laboratory focuses on finding a cure for type 1 diabetes. Over 2 million Americans, of which 300,000 are children, live with type 1 diabetes. Right now, you in the audience do not have to think about breathing. It just naturally happens. Do not have to think about digesting your food. Do not have to think about your blood sugar levels. Not everybody is that lucky. People with type 1 diabetes have to constantly think about their blood sugar levels. This is because they lack a hormone called insulin that does that job for most of us. Imagine being a small child. You wake up. The first thing you do is to prick your finger to measure your blood sugar and inject insulin accordingly to control that level. You go to school. You eat a very carefully planned lunch. Prick your finger again. Inject insulin accordingly. It's the afternoon. You do well in your essay. Your teacher rewards you with a sweet treat. Not for you. You cannot have that treat. You go back home. You have dinner again. You go to bed. But not before setting several alarms, because you need to wake up during the night to make sure that while you were sleeping, your blood sugar did not get too low or too high. Because if it did, you might go blind, you might lose a limb, you might lose your life. As a child with type 1 diabetes, you become hyper-aware of your mortality, even before you know how to read or how to write. Any mistake could be quite severe and cost you even your life. And the parents, if your child has type 1 diabetes, you do not get a full night of sleep up until they're teenagers. So this disease affects not only the patient, but also everyone around them. So how come that type 1 diabetes patients cannot make insulin if most of us can? Well, turns out it's because they're lacking a very special cell in your pancreas, this banana-shaped organ right in the center of your body. Perhaps because it's so central to our body. And these cells, they make insulin, responding to blood sugar. In these patients, something happens that they no longer have those cells. You see, we think of the immune system as our guardian, our protector. It fights infections. It fights cancer cells. For type 1 diabetes patients, their immune system betrays them because it recognizes and kills their pancreatic beta cells. And this is why they cannot make insulin. So how can we then replenish these beta cells and give them again the opportunity, the capability to make their own insulin? Well, if we're a salamander, it would be quite easy. A salamander, when you chop off their arm, for example, the cells right there on the stump become stem cells. And stem cells can become any cell type you want. A skin cell, a liver cell, a brain cell. And so if you were just like that, we'd just tell our body to, in the pancreas, make stem cells and replenish those beta cells. Well, unfortunately, we're not quite there yet. But worry not, because I can take your cells into my laboratory and make them become stem cells. And then I can convince them over the course of 1 month to become functional insulin-producing beta cells. We can make enough beta cells to fill up this whole room. So have we solved type 1 diabetes? We can make enough beta cells for everybody who is missing them. Well, not so quick. Remember, why did the disease start? Because the immune system in these patients recognizes and kills their beta cells. So just putting more beta cells in would be like building a beautiful sandcastle right by the ocean just to watch the waves wash it away. So we need to address the immune rejection, the killing of the beta cell. Luckily, not every immune cell is obsessed with killing things. If the immune system were an army, there is a general of this army that makes sure that nothing goes overboard. That is the regulatory T cell. The regulatory T cell inhibits, controls, regulates specific immune responses to make sure that we can fight infections, viruses, cancer cells without harming our own tissues and organs. These cells can be found in the blood. We can purify them and expand them also to great numbers. So is that it? We can just inject type 1 diabetes patients with a lot of regulatory T cells? No. Why? Because regulatory T cells do not directly see beta cells. There's a missing step. How do we make it such that the regulatory T cell becomes the best friend, the bodyguard even, of the beta cell that is under attack? And so for this, our innovation is to engineer genetically the beta cells to express a protein, a ligand, a bait on their surface. At the same time, we take regulatory T cells and engineer also another protein on their surface. These two proteins come together like a lock and key mechanism, a molecular handshake, if you will. And so thanks to this, the regulatory T cells can now be the bodyguards of these beta cells. Imagine how many people we can help. They can now make their own insulin. They don't have to live on the edge anymore. Does this stop here? No. Every year, over 100,000 people receive a life-saving organ transplant, a kidney, a liver, a lung. This is only possible thanks to immunosuppressive drugs. These are quite archaic, blunt tools that shut down your immune system as a whole. It is like living with AIDS. You can no longer fight infections. You become very susceptible to getting blood cancers. Now, better than dying, but clearly not optimal. With this innovation, we can specifically, locally protect any transplanted tissue or organ into a patient, from organ transplant, type 1 diabetes, and beyond. Growing up, I never could have dreamed that I would go from staring at salamanders to looking at my cuts on my knees, to studying stem cells, to learning about the immune system, to finding a cure for type 1 diabetes. Science is like that. Every discovery builds upon a previous discovery. This is why it is so important to have constant and stable funding for biomedical research. Because you never know where the next breakthrough will come from. This career in science has allowed me to keep this childlike curiosity my whole life. What kind of questions do you come across in your lives? What do you feel as if you have become less curious about as the years have come by? Never stop asking questions. You never know where they will take you.